The law of attraction is a lie, not in its essence, but in the childish way it has been reduced to a catchphrase of "think positive and you will receive." If that simplistic approach solved everything, it would be pretty baffling that so many people remain frustrated even after repeating motivational affirmations like mantras. Plenty of folks stick to these cookie-cutter techniques, and when the results do not show up, they blame the universe, never pausing to consider that the problem lies in the shallow nature of a system that refuses to face the genuine internal alchemy required to co-create the reality they desire. To understand how this superficial method seduces people, just look at our instant gratification culture. Someone stumbles on a social media post claiming that if they picture themselves every day driving a fancy car, reality will soon rearrange itself. They try the ritual, but behind the scenes, the same person is weighed down by traumas, resentments, and an unconscious belief they do not deserve prosperity. No amount of visualization stands a chance against that unresolved psychological whirlwind. It is like trying to tune into a radio station while loud static is blasting through the channel. The paradox becomes crystal clear when we notice that ever-advancing technology is swallowing up our intuitive connection. Instead of listening to their inner voice, people rely on algorithms to tell them what to eat, how to dress, and even whom to vote for. A Stanford University study showed that most millennials trust AI system recommendations more than their own judgment, especially when it comes to career decisions. It is not enough to be modern if you abandon the inner voice that, ironically, has always served as humanity's compass for evolution. Centuries ago, Lao Tzu warned that those who search outside are only dreaming, while those who search within awaken. There is also a seldom explored question: why did ancient traditions never reduce manifestation to passively asking the universe for favors? Among the Egyptians, prosperity emerged from emotional purification rituals and the practice of Heka, a harmonious combination of vocal intonations, gestures, and physical action. Meanwhile, the "ask and you shall receive" model sold in modern books ignores the heart of the matter. Authentic manifestation requires vibrational coherence, not just a stream of positive phrases droned on autopilot. Current neuroscience supports this view by showing, through neuroplasticity research, that repeating shallow thoughts does not build strong new neural connections if the emotional state is not aligned. Deeply rooted scarcity patterns keep running in the subconscious, blocking attempts to attract anything different. The brain works like a circuit. Anything that conflicts with old beliefs is tossed out or silenced before it can take hold. Planting seeds of abundance in soil full of fear is just an illusion, no matter how profitable the marketing might be for light law of attraction programs. Some argue that insisting on positive thinking is enough, but they forget to mention the need to face one's own shadows. It is way easier to be dazzled by shiny promises than to confront traumas, suppressed issues, pain, and beliefs of unworthiness. Sellers of magic formulas love saying the universe conspires in your favor. Ancient traditions around the world, on the other hand, quietly point out that the universe only responds to your level of consciousness. In this clash of narratives, the person who remains unhappy after plastering the wall with optimistic post-its discovers that without a deep dive into self-knowledge, repeating ready-made catchphrases is useless. Each chapter in this story shows that superficiality is not only fruitless, but dangerous, since it keeps up the illusion of spiritual effort while sweeping true healing under the rug. Modern times love to brag about being innovative, but many so-called scientific breakthroughs are simply rediscoveries of ancient knowledge. The Egyptians did not build pyramids just to house the remains of pharaohs. According to less conventional studies, those structures served as cosmic alignment devices and sites of spiritual initiation. In the pyramid texts, you can find references to the notion that matter is a condensed form of energy, which quantum physics confirmed much later. In other words, when contemporary gurus say, everything is vibration, they often do not realize that mysterious rites taught this principle thousands of years ago. In Vedic India, the idea of sankalpa, or sacred intention, shaped everyday life. It was never just a random wish, but an intrinsic commitment aligned with one's dharma. Research published in the Journal of Consciousness Studies indicates that dedicated sankalpa practitioners show brainwave patterns similar to advanced meditators, dominated by theta waves linked to creative imagination and intuition. It was not about asking for stuff, but rather vibrating in tune with what you seek, to the point where physical reality has no choice but to respond to that congruence. The Andean shamans took this principle to another level. The concept of Ani, meaning cosmic reciprocity, taught that nothing is free. Every act of manifestation demands an equivalent energetic investment. Modern physics refers to energy conservation, but Andean traditions always knew there is no harvest without planting seeds first. Why has contemporary culture lost sight of this essential balance? Perhaps it is because of the split between rationality and intuition that got worse in the modern era. After Renaissance science pushed knowledge fragmentation to an extreme, it became more convenient to label anything not measurable in Cartesian labs as superstition. Carl Jung tried to reconnect the fragments when he introduced the idea of the collective unconscious. He stressed that a purely rational focus was stifling fundamental aspects of the psyche, condemning humanity to daydream in search of meaning. Meanwhile, science, in its more lucid aspects, is circling back to ancestral viewpoints. Research by Herbert Benson at Harvard Medical School highlights the effectiveness of meditation practices in reshaping parts of the brain that govern fear and anxiety, something Eastern mystics understood through direct experience centuries ago. Quantum physics, for its part, makes it clear that there is no real separation between the observer and the observed phenomenon. The act of measuring by itself alters the behavior of subatomic particles. If an observer interferes at a quantum level on a tiny scale, why could they not exert a similar influence on events in the macroscopic world? Fritjof Capra, in The Tao of Physics, connects this principle to Eastern mystical traditions, emphasizing the underlying unity of the cosmos. The coaching culture has cherry-picked the parts of these findings that suit their message without diving into the complexity and responsibility that come with the power to co-create. While ancient civilizations lived with an integrated view of body, mind, and spirit, uniting sacred dances, songs, fasting, and deep connection, modern society has become scattered, addicted to screens, and locked away in algorithmic bubbles. People want the quickest path to get stuff, but ignore the fact that no app can replace the inner stillness required to hear what ancient traditions might call the higher self. Talking about co-creation without the slightest willingness to break through these barriers amounts to empty chatter, another trendy look disguised as personal development. The greatest insult to spirituality is not rejecting external deities, but denying the divinity that is inherent in every human being. Institutionalized religious organizations have often pushed the idea that access to the sacred requires official experts and mandatory sacraments. Meanwhile, the Vedantic scriptures insist that each person carries the same essence that makes up cosmic consciousness, summed up in the teaching Tat Tivam ACI, you are that. The key point is that this principle is not mere poetic license. Scientific findings suggest that deep introspection activates areas of the brain linked to expanded perception and reduced ego. Research on the default mode network shows that our self-image and inner monologue are dramatically altered in advanced meditative states. serotonin and dopamine are released in new ways, creating sensations of unity with something bigger. It is possible that what centuries of tradition call enlightenment is actually a neurochemical shift that transcends the feeling of separation. Nikola Tesla, for instance, described waves of insight that showed up during moments of deep immersion, not through linear equations. He tapped into all ideas as if he had opened a mental portal, bypassing exhaustive calculations and coming up with revolutionary inventions. Carl Jung, exploring the symbolism of the unconscious, saw that encountering archetypes like the self could be staggering. The point is not to glorify the ego, but to integrate it into a deeper layer of being. The Sufis, in their whirling dances, speak of fana, the dissolution of one's limited identity to merge with the whole. Buddhists use the word sunyata, the fertile emptiness from which all things arise and to which they return. These radical experiences are far from what is marketed today as light spirituality, full of gurus declaring you are God, while packaging courses that boost self-importance. We cannot ignore, however, that modern society simultaneously mocks the notion of inner divinity and worships wealthy and famous personalities. CEOs and influencers are treated almost like demigods, but mental health statistics paint a grim reality. The Harvard Business Review has reported that 70% of top-level executives experience severe anxiety, a product of living in a world where the sacred core is never even discussed, just an endless chase for targets. This contradiction highlights how the dominant culture overlooks true internal connection, preferring to celebrate hollow symbols of power. From the perspective of ancient traditions, the sacred is more than just praying to a deity out there. It is living in a state of alignment in which your mind, emotions, and body form an open channel for higher consciousness. Denying our own divine potential leaves a crowd of people feeling empty. The frantic search for quick fixes, from the latest meditation app to a Spirituality 2.0 crash course, does not fill that hole. There is no substitute for courageously facing yourself, which means recognizing that narratives of personal power without deep humility become traps that feed vanity and illusion. The human body is not a cold piece of hardware separate from the mind. It works more like an antenna transmitting and receiving frequencies. Bottled up emotions act like static in that broadcast. If you swallow anger, fear, or guilt, you do not actually get rid of them. Those feelings crystallize in muscle tension, metabolic disorders, and even chronic illnesses. The Mayo Clinic notes that up to 80% of doctor visits are driven by psychosomatic roots, reinforcing the idea that unprocessed emotions can seriously undermine physical and mental health. Another vital secret is the deep connection between our emotional states, physical balance, and our ability to co-create reality. Both ancient knowledge and some current research suggest that each emotion triggers specific chemicals, neuropeptides, that flow through the body, affecting everything from immune function to healing processes. When fear, sadness, or anger remain repressed, the body responds by establishing tension patterns that hamper both the manifestation of goals and overall well-being. On the other hand, when we work to release those bottled-up emotions through therapy, breath work, or meditative practices, it acts like a cleanup that frees our energetic field to be more receptive to what we want to attract. These age-old insights indicate that the law of attraction works in a far more integrated way than most people realize, because physiology, mental state, and emotions are inseparable. Instead of viewing illness or imbalance as a personal flaw, we can see them as signs that the body and mind are calling out for realignment. In traditional Chinese medicine, the liver is linked to anger and the kidneys to fear. These correspondences, rather than being superstitious, find support in thermography studies showing that energetic blockages affect blood flow and heat distribution in the body. The biophysicist James Oshman argues that body tissues function like semiconductors for electromagnetic information. Put, each emotion leaves a measurable trace in your physiology. Trying to contain it is like building a dam out of paper. Sooner or later, the flood breaks through. Meanwhile, social media thrives on emotional reactivity, fueling political polarization, competition, and endless comparison. While users quarrel non-stop in the digital world, few take a moment to notice what their own bodies are telling them. Strangely enough, we now have a flood of self-help and meditation apps promising clarity in 5 minutes. The result is a paradox. We have more digital tools for developing self-awareness than ever before, but we often lack genuine depth. An MIT report suggests that relying on algorithms for routine decisions can stunt the prefrontal cortex and weaken our ability to use intuition or do more complex reasoning. Shamanic traditions have always been clear that authentic spiritual insights require freeing repressed emotional energy. Siberian shamans used drum-induced trance states to purge buried trauma. Ayahuasca ceremonies in the Amazon used ritually expose deep wounds that need to be worked through. Instead of thinking positive or piling on more affirmations, the process involves facing our darkest parts. There is no real joy when the basement of your psyche is packed with unacknowledged fear. Looking at the law of attraction through this lens reveals the importance of whatever vibrates in the unconscious realm. Saying, "I attract abundance," is not going to work if you are clinging to a fear of scarcity. The quantum universe answers the full frequency you are sending out, not just the nice words on the surface. If every cell in your body is soaked in resentment, reality cannot easily deliver the opposite. By now, it should be clearer why so many people end up disappointed. They focus on decorating the living room, but pay no attention to the junk piled up in the basement. No real change happens without practice. Reading self-help books or watching inspiring videos can spark awareness, but daily habits are what shape our vibration in real life. Ancient traditions always emphasized everyday rituals, even short ones, because consistent mindful actions restructure mental and energetic patterns. It is not just about thinking differently, but also taking tangible steps to clear emotions, awaken intuition, and align body and mind. Nowadays, most of us start the day by checking social media. Anyone who wakes up already drowning in a surge of news and notifications is unlikely to find inner calm. Celtic traditions suggested grounding first thing in the morning. Feel your body position, the quality of the air, the heartbeat, and the faint stirrings of your initial thoughts. Even a few minutes of this practice sends signals of calm to the nervous system. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett's research indicates that this grounding moment can lower impulsive reactions by stabilizing the limbic system. Another ancient practice that has earned scientific validation is specific gratitude. Saying, "I am grateful to be alive," has less impact than writing down concrete details, like feeling a warm beam of sunshine on your skin or enjoying the sweet tang of a piece of fruit for breakfast. Researchers at UC Davis found improvements in prefrontal cortex gray matter density among volunteers who embraced this habit for a few weeks. It is a simple way to reorient the mind and train it to notice subtle positive aspects that used to go unnoticed. All the positive thinking in the world will not help if you are dragging a mountain of emotional baggage. The Sufis whirled until they entered a trance that dissolved psychic blocks. Shamans chanted repetitive songs to access deep layers of the unconscious. Wilhelm Reich created bioenergetics to break through chronic muscle tension that stored traumatic memories. A study at the University of Bern noted a significant drop in anxiety symptoms among people who danced freely for 20 minutes a day with no concern for technique, simply letting their bodies express what needed release. Writing can also be an effective outlet for catharsis. The Egyptians had a custom of writing their secrets and sorrows on pieces of pottery and then breaking them, symbolizing liberation. Today, researchers at the University of Texas have shown that writing about painful experiences for 15 minutes a day over 3 consecutive days boosts immunity and cuts down on doctor visits. Words serve as a bridge between the unconscious and conscious mind. By letting raw accounts flow without fearing what might emerge, the writer confronts fears and shame, helping loosen the hold of buried traumas. Many people complain they have no time for spiritual practice, but forget that every daily task is a chance for moving meditation. Zen Buddhism presents Zanshin, the idea of staying alert even in everyday actions. Washing dishes, cooking, gardening, answering emails, everything can become a mindful activity. Shunryu Suzuki wrote that if you tackle each step with total focus, life becomes a sequence of sacred acts rather than a pile of chores. Companies that adopt mindful action principles report amazing outcomes. At Patagonia, for example, employees are allowed to dedicate part of their workday to personal projects that support the company's ecological mission. Internal reports point to a major boost in both motivation and creativity. Without the relentless chase for cold metrics, a collective sense of purpose flourishes and morale climbs. This phenomenon illustrates the famous saying, "Align with universal flow and see what happens." When your daily choices resonate with deeper values, reality reconfigures itself to support that movement. The tempting idea of waiting for an external savior appeals to many because it spares them from dealing with their own internal conflicts. Politicians, NGOs, and philanthropic celebrities can all pitch in with short-term fixes, but the seed of true transformation is planted inside each person. Our planet faces environmental breakdowns, devastating inequality, mental health crises, and more, and people often point to external factors. However, a deeper look reveals the mirror. Our shared crisis magnifies individual imbalances that get projected outward. The so-called 100th monkey theory proposed by Lyle Watson describes a curious phenomenon. When a critical number of monkeys learned to wash sweet potatoes in the ocean, other monkeys on distant islands started doing the same thing without direct contact. Applying that concept to humanity suggests that when enough people shift their consciousness, the information reverberates through the collective psyche. Skeptics question the theory's legitimacy, but it is hard to deny the power of resonance in mindful actions. A Princeton University study found that it may take only about 3.5% of a population, if they are truly mobilized and consistent, to spark large-scale structural changes. Gandhi proved this in real life by leading India's fight against colonial rule without firing bullets, relying instead on internal discipline so powerful it inspired millions. The confusion arises when, instead of diving deep into inner growth, people turn to superficial social media activism. Liking posts that support worthy causes generates an instant sense of virtue, but does not necessarily lead to changes in daily life. This is another hallmark of a fast-paced culture. Meditation apps promise profound peace in 10 minutes, yet traditions like Theravada Buddhism insist that liberation takes years of practice and detailed observation of mental formations. If we water down ancestral methods, we turn them into quick-fix commodities, never facing the pain of dismantling old habits. Another key to building new worlds is redefining success. Indigenous peoples measure prosperity not by the amount of stuff they own, but by the health of their connection with nature and community. The physicist Vandana Shiva links the environmental crisis to the suppression of the sacred feminine. a logic of nurturance and interdependence that has been replaced by exploitation and domination. Ecological policies are crucial, but they will not last if we fail to address the internal disease of greed, destructive competition, and a sense of separation from the earth. In urban life, every choice, no matter how small, is a vote for the kind of reality we want to create. The Toltec concept of mitoti portrays the universe as a vast tapestry where each thread interacts with the rest. Buying from ethical producers, cutting back on plastics, and sharing knowledge without hidden motives, all of these acts influence the whole. It might sound idealistic, but every historic shift began with small cells of transformation that spread until they reached a tipping point. In a digital world, this can happen even faster, though distraction can also be that much more intense. Technology provides new possibilities. Blockchain can track supply chains for transparency, and artificial intelligence can detect social stress patterns. However, without an inner revolution, the same innovations can become fancy shackles. Byung-Chul Han warns that our fatigued society is driven by an endless hunt for performance and toxic positivity. If we do not rediscover our inner sacredness and honor silence as a source of wisdom, we will keep spinning in cycles that look new, but repeat the same patterns of domination and alienation. Changing the world begins with exploring our inner landscape. Every act of co-creation starts on the invisible stage of consciousness. For those interested in diving deeper, there are audio recordings designed to guide listeners into elevated meditative states, making it easier to tap into this internal matrix of divine intelligence. You can access these materials by clicking the link on the screen or in the comments. If this video sparked any new thoughts for you, consider taking the next step. The next video will resonate with you.